Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is John Parrott, and by way of the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, I'm the new director at the King County International Airport, which you probably know as Boeing Field. This airport is owned by the people of King County, and it is a tremendous regional asset and an important economic development engine. Soon after Executive Constantine named me director, I was given a list of priorities, and right at the top was seeing what we could do about immigration and customs enforcement flights that transport immigrant detainees. In the deed signed after World War II that transferred King County Airport from federal government to local ownership, any government aircraft has the right to use the airstrip and facilities here. That includes ICE. However, we believe ICE uses charter aircraft to transport immigrants. Neither ICE nor its charters are legally obligated to file passenger manifest or flight schedules with King County, and they don't. That makes tracking people in flights an ongoing challenge. I want to further point out that here at King County Airport, we can never board an airplane to perform an inspection, nor direct federal air traffic controllers in the tower to prevent any airplane from landing. Keeping those constraints in mind, Executive Constantine signed an executive order today that lays out our next steps. In sum, the executive order directs King County to ban flights of immigrant detainees to and from King County Airport in the long term, and until we get there, to provide more transparency about ICE operations here. Consistent with previous policies, King County is a welcoming community that does not use local law enforcement or other services to enforce federal immigration laws. As is noted with other King County operations, such as the King County Jail, we comply with ICE directives when accompanied by a court order. There are others in the room with me today, including Deputy Executive Rachel Smith, who can spell that out a little further if needed. This new executive order specifically applies to companies that lease hangar space and other facilities at King County Airport called fixed base operators. It focuses on the point when a detainee either gets off an aircraft and enters King County or passes through the airport to embark on an airplane. The executive order makes sure our local immigration and human rights ordinances cover these individuals to the maximum extent possible. Specifically, ordinances that King County will not cooperate or facilitate immigration enforcement without a specific court order. The long-term goal of this executive order is to ban the practice of transporting immigration detainees at the King County Airport. The order signed by Executive Constantine describes other actions. We will update King County Airport's minimum standards, the airport's rules and regulations, to provide reports and audits from businesses involved with transporting immigration detainees. We will, to the extent possible, install security cameras at public ramps and other key locations at King County Airport. And we will draft all future leases for any commercial activities at King County Airport to prohibit transporting immigration detainees. As noted just a moment ago, this would not apply to government aircraft and services. There are many more tasks that I have been assigned by the executive, and I am looking forward to taking many of you on a tour of the facility in a few moments. But this much is clear. Executive Constantine has been consistent in his values and approach to immigration enforcement, and we share that here at King County International Airport. Thank you, and I'll now take questions. Yes, ma'am. That is correct. The airport does not have the authority to say any particular flight cannot land here. That's correct. We can limit the services that can be provided at the airport and what types of services and operations the fixed base operators can be allowed to handle. And that's what we're going to attempt to do in the negotiation of the leases as we go through time. No, the ICE flights, actual direct ICE flights, would be government aircraft. If they're using charter aircraft, we believe we will be able to put in the leases that they will not be able to handle those flights.
So the bottom line is nothing changes right now. It's all about leases that are going to be renegotiated or coming up with negotiations. Those that have leases right now, nothing changes.
I wouldn't say nothing changes. We are going to be installing the cameras so that we can better monitor the activity on the airport. And that will give us more awareness of what is actually happening at the airport, and taking a more proactive stance in auditing the activity at the airport will also give us more knowledge that we can share about what's happening.
But those that already have leases, their activities don't change.
Not immediately, no. It varies. Tony, you want to speak to leases?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tony Wright. I'm the Director of Facilities Management Division for King County. And as such, I manage the real estate portfolio for the county, including leases here at the airport. So in response to your question about nothing changing immediately, we are regularly and frequently involved in leases for different parts and parcels throughout the airport, and have a dozen or so underway right now for different things, not all of them with FBOs, but we have a long-term relationship with them. They desire additional things from the airport. So the opportunity exists to work within their current lease and see what the terms are for those, and that's what John was speaking to. The other part is that as we encounter different requirements that the FBO may wish to have from the county, we will consider those as part of our ongoing negotiation to reopen some of these long-term leases, many of which have terms over 30 years, but are amended or added to and are not whole and untouchable in that respect.
So the services that an FBO typically provides to an aircraft as an example, would land here at Boeing Field, taxi onto a leasehold. If there are passengers of any type that are going to be getting on or off the aircraft, they would do so through the lessee-controlled gates on the leasehold that connect the leasehold to the public area. They might use the terminal that the FBO has. Signature, Modern, and Kenmore Aero Services all have facilities that those passengers may go through, and then they would probably also, if needed, refuel the aircraft, service the lavatory, any other technical things that needed to be done.
For clarification,
Fixed base operator.
So modern, which used to be created by Taylor,
Mhm.
is one that's most commonly used for flights, charter flights for height. When is that lease up?
I don't know, when is the Modern lease up?
The leasehold for that facility is composed of several different leases, some small ones which are up at the end of the year, some larger ones which are up 30 years in the future. I'd have to kind of break those out, and I don't have the specifics to give those to you, but it's a range. But most of the larger leaseholds are up several years into the future. But I can get that for you afterwards.
have you talked to, or are you expecting any pushback from ICE or any other agency?
That would be up to them.
Have you talked to the FAA?
We have.
And what does the FAA say about it?
The FAA, it's our airport to run, and as long as we operate in a fair and equitable manner, we don't know that there will be any issues with them. Much of that will depend on if there are complaints from tenants or other agencies.
So some of these leases are 3 months to 30 years now. When do you expect to see change and no longer actually 35 years out of this airport?
I think that's going to depend on how often different parts of leases get negotiated.
So for a lease that's, if we have a tenant that has a long-term lease and they can choose not to ask for anything more, they can operate within their current lease, in which case that document wouldn't be reopened for many years. John also addressed the airport minimum standards as another aspect of that which can affect that, and I'll let him address that, but that mechanism goes through the lease in terms of another way to adjust the operations on the airport, which is kind of like what I would call general terms and conditions associated with that lease. But it is possible for a long-term lease, were the tenant not to require any amendments or changes, it would go till the expiration of the lease.
Can I just add that we would also seek to use what we believe are our existing rights within those leases to bring the level of transparency that John mentioned a moment ago in terms of auditing, reporting, so that we have a better understanding of what they're doing related to these detainees in ICE.
King County operates the King County International Airport. Obviously, there are desires in minimizing or eliminating this activity, but that's not within the realm of the county. It is mentioned in the executive order urging Congress to take action on a national basis.
Yeah, and I would also just add that no other local jurisdiction, to our knowledge, has done this, and so we are hoping to be leading the way, and we will be building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak. And so I think we're going to be seeking partnerships and also seeking to lead other jurisdictions who want to do this and who may actually have information that would be helpful for our implementation.
What's the downside in county? Why is it harm in county to have ICE transporting immigrants?
Well, I think it's not in accordance with the philosophy of the executive and the people of the county.
Absolutely, and in fact, we have both by county council ordinance and by executive order that we are a welcoming community, and we can get you all of those documents, and we expect all parts of the county to adhere to that.
There's a very subtle nuance with the FAA. The FAA does not allow unjust discrimination. The FAA does allow what seems to be oxymoronic just discrimination. Airports can find certain types of activities based on a number of different things that they don't allow, and that's how we're approaching this. Pardon me? One example would be if you're at a small airport with a 3,000-foot gravel runway, and someone calls and wants to land a 747 there. That aircraft doesn't fit there. So it might be the size of the aircraft, or it might be the type of aircraft based on noise profiles, perhaps an armed military aircraft. There are a number of different reasons that you can restrict activity at the airport, but it has to be applied on a level playing field. You can't simply say that person operating a 737 can't come into the airport, but those other people can. You have to find other ways to justify your restrictions. The reason we're giving here is we are going to negotiate it through the leases. We're not saying these flights cannot come in. We're saying those that have agreements with us must abide by certain standards. I believe the intent of the executive order is to cover all immigrant detainee flights, whether they're deportation or relocation. I don't want to guess as to what others may do.
I suspect we will get legal challenges, and we will engage with whoever we need to.
Last year, we got about $11,000 in landing fees from SWIFT. We got $1 million from UPS, and most of our revenue is from land rent.
So, but this executive order is not expected to be any fiscal impact?
If the SWIFT flights, if the ICE deportation flights were to go away, it would cost the airport about $11,000. Yeah. One of the actions we're going to take by having the cameras viewing the ramp areas, we'll be able to review and see how the people are getting on and off aircraft through the use of our minimum standards. We'll be able to ensure that certain standards are upheld with people boarding and deplaning aircraft. That it will be difficult to measure immediately, but we will measure and be able to share the information we have.
Tony, maybe you could say a little bit about lease enforcement?
So we have, in terms of our ability, once we have appropriate language in leases, or we have identified language in existing leases that we tend to exercise, they, just like, I guess, just like any landlord, we have terms within our leases for enforcing some of those activities. We will tie the monitoring and other transparency effects that the county is going to be placing into effect with those lease enforcement tools to ensure a change in behavior.
How many flights are we talking about?
One of the challenges is that we're not sure how many flights there are because they don't file a flight plan with the airport. There are some call signs that are used commonly for the repatriation flights, and we've shared that information with a number of people. In some months, we believe there are in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 flights a month, but we're not certain of those numbers. The aircraft we see typically is a 737. I'm not certain which configuration it is in the interior.
How long have you known these flights are happening, and since then, how long has it taken for the executive action?
I believe the county first engaged with the advocates about a year or so ago. I've been here for 3 months, and we don't know how long these. I don't personally know how long these flights have been taking place. I suspect before then.
Yeah, and we have been working with the prosecuting attorney's office, with advocates, with outside counsel who are experts in FAA and others for probably about the last 8 months to work on this issue.
Yes.
It is not. We have actually been working on this issue prior to our engagement with the researchers at the University of Washington. We have been working with them also. This executive order is really the memorialization of the last 8 months of work that we have done. The UW researchers have generated some information that is information we don't have that we find useful. So we are going to continue to seek to get more of that information and also seek to get some of that requested information from the federal government for ourselves as well. There is some specific data, and I'm going to get out of my depth quickly here so we can take this offline, but there is some data specific to the ICE flights that one could potentially cross-reference with some of the things that we see here at the airport. But we have a draft of the report, and we have not finished reviewing it yet.
Do you have any idea how this issue compares to other airports here? Like, you have a lot of flights coming in relative to, say, SeaTac, or, I mean, how do you compare to what's going on here?
You know, without knowing the specific number of flights that are actually being chartered by ICE in and out of here, and other airports have the same challenge, it's very difficult to know how we compare.
Actually, the woman sitting right in front of you will be able to tell you that.
Yeah, we worked with ACLU.
Come on up, Bukta.
Yeah. My name is Bukta Qaisar, and I work in the Executive's Office as Immigration Policy Advisor. We have met with an advocacy group consisting of Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, ACLU, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, Colectiva Legal de Pueblo, and Northwest Resistance Center.
Thank you, Gupta.
Yes. The land for the airport was deeded to the county by the federal government with the stipulation that federal government aircraft can use the airport. Was that post-World War II?
Yeah.
Right after World War II. Well, 1948. That was right after World War II. Other questions? Would anyone like to go on an airport tour?
Thank you.
Thank you all.